They poisoned our children for profit. They turned food into chemicals. They made obesity normal and sickness profitable. But something incredible has just happened. The giants of big food are waving their white flags. General Mills, Kraft, major chains, all suddenly removing toxic dyes and chemicals from their products. Why now? Because a revolution is coming that will expose the biggest health scandal in American history. We are talking about Medicaid fraud so massive that it dwarfs any financial crime ever committed. And this is one of the reasons why our economy has been in shambles, because we're spending way too much money on this stuff. We're about to reveal how 50% spending increase funds laziness, not healthcare. How big food and big government created a sick, dependent population on purpose. And the surrender has begun, but the real battle is just starting. Keep watching. Now, just like big food poisons us for profit, our educational system has been poisoning young minds. But there is an antidote. The Tuttle Twins magazine teaches real kids economics, liberty, and responsibility through comics and activities that make learning fun. While schools push progressive narcissism, teaching kids that they are victims who need some sort of government salvation, Tuttle Twins shows them that they're capable individuals who think for themselves. No emotional manipulation, no identity politics, just truth about free markets, personal responsibility, and values. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. And this is why you need to arm your kids with real knowledge. Subscribe now for just $56 per month at TuttleTwins.com/next. Don't let them be indoctrinated. Teach them to think, not what to think. Now, the surrender is stunning and sudden. After decades of poisoning Americans, big food just blinked. Watch this Fox News bombshell that has the processed food industry in full retreat.
Big food brands are making changes to their products as the Trump administration pushes to make America healthy again. So take a look. We start with General Mills. They're removing artificial food dyes from U.S. cereals and the foods that they send to our schools, K through 12 schools. That's going to happen by next summer. This is going to happen by the end of 2027. They're removing all artificial dyes completely by the end, like I said, of 2027. They make Trick cereal, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, Cheerios, Rice Chex, the things that are probably in your pantry. Also, Kraft and Heinz, they're saying goodbye to the artificial dyes by the end of 2027. Includes Jell-O, Capri Suns, Kool-Aid, and Crystal Light. Then the In-N-Out Burger, they removed artificial dyes from strawberry shakes and pink lemonade, and they replaced it with the beet juice and turmeric instead. Their focus is on the red 40 and the yellow 5. Also, the high-fructose corn syrup, they're replacing that with natural sugar. Then let's take Steak and Shake. Instead, they're using the beef tallow fat. We've heard RFK Jr. talk a lot about this. Instead of the vegetable oils to make their French fries, their onion rings, and their chicken tenders. And the tallow fat, it's still unsaturated, but it is a lot healthier than the heavily processed seed oils. Then all the spices in your cabinets. McCormick, many of those in my cabinet are made by this brand, working to remove artificial food dyes and sodiums. Their focus is on the red dye number 3, which has been linked to cancer concerns.
General Mills, Kraft Heinz, In-N-Out Burger, all removing artificial dyes and high fructose corn syrup. They're scared, and they should be. They know they've been negligent. This isn't corporate responsibility. This is corporate panic. They see what's coming with RFK Jr. and the Make America Healthy Again movement. For the first time in history, we have leaders who understand that toxic food and toxic politics come from the same source. Narcissistic corporations and bureaucrats who believe that their profits matter more than our health. But removing dyes are just the beginning. The real revolution is happening at News Nation, where they're exposing the welfare food complex that keeps Americans sick and dependent. Take a look.
Food. Let's talk about that. It's all around us. You know this, from the supermarket to the vending machines at work, at school. The availability and convenience make it pretty hard to avoid altogether. But the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says those tasty treats are often linked to certain chronic illnesses like heart disease, number of different cancers. But President Trump's new U.S. Secretary of Health, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who Dr. Stroman and I were just talking about, and Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins, They want to change that, starting with government programs like SNAP. Joining me now is News Nation Weekend anchor Anna Koyman. Anna, what exactly are they proposing here?
Hey there, Marky. Good morning to you. Good morning to everybody at home. Brett Trump's USDA chief says the Make America Healthy Again Commission will consider banning junk food and sugary drink purchases with food stamps. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins says the SNAP program for low-income families really needs to prioritize healthy food options instead. The problem is, as we know, here in America, a lot of these so-called healthy options are actually really expensive compared to the cheap, ultra-processed foods that are often purchased. And accessibility to these healthier options is a real problem in poor communities. Now, the SNAP program, it's enormous. If you want to check out these numbers, according to the USDA, last year, 41.7 million people received SNAP benefits, and it cost taxpayers nearly $94 billion, each person receiving about $188 each month. So the problem is a lot of these dollars trying to go towards fresh fruit and vegetable wouldn't go very far. And there are currently at least 2 bills in Congress about SNAP benefits, Marky. The first one would ban them from being used on junk food items like cookies, cakes, pies, sodas. We know what they are. The other bill, though, is more about finding ways to improve nutrition and diet quality for these recipients. And Marky, another economic argument for this ban is that taxpayers are, in a sense, kind of paying twice, paying for the junk food up front and then essentially paying for the medical care as well, because these junk foods often cause chronic disease.
That's an interesting point to make. I mean, you can see both sides of the story. You know, you have to have enough food to eat, but the healthy food is a little bit more expensive. Now, what do you think it is that makes it so expeditious to just put a bunch of garbage in our food and not give us the good and not let us buy the good food? We're talking about the exact same kind of world that FDR was talking about before. This is straight up communism versus capitalism. You know, the regulatory state is so wild. The regulatory state is so vast. The amount of unfunded liabilities, they're just they're so absolutely insane. It's almost like people don't necessarily even have a choice. You know, we're talking about 41 million people on SNAP benefits, $94 billion in taxpayer money. And what do they buy? They buy poison. They're going to get you from the top, they're going to get you from the bottom, and they're going to get you from the sides. You know, and this is the dirty little secret, is that the system is designed for dependence. They want you unhealthy and lethargic and tired and fatigued. You know, create cheap, addictive food that's nutritionally empty. You know, that sounds like the recipe for a very compliant population. Especially when they have no choice but to put their hand out and say, "Please, sir, I want some more." You know, if you trap poor Americans in this cycle of sickness and dependence, you can't act surprised when healthcare costs explode. And then, of course, they want to blame us. Total projection, narcissistic, antisocial projection, blaming us for problems that they started. This is the conscious manipulation of vulnerable populations for profit and power. No remorse, no empathy, no accountability, just fat, poisoned children. You know, and this endless gaslighting about food deserts and accessibility as if, you know, don't take away our sodas. Don't take away our sodas. You know, we wouldn't be trying to stop people from getting the things that they want. I mean, obviously we have to put better ingredients in our food. It's no wonder everyone always says, well, the pizza in Italy tastes much better than the pizza here. Well, why is that? You know, it's not that the regulatory state is completely all bad, but a lot of this stuff has been banned in other countries for this very reason. Maybe there's a reason why some things just taste better in other places. You know, that's in the water. Dr. Oz just dropped a truth bomb about the Medicaid explosion that perfectly illustrates this manufactured crisis. Take a look.
We are responsible for adjudicating about $1.7 trillion to CMS. That's twice the size of the Defense budget. It's massive. Puts a big target on our back. There are massive efforts by foreign governments and, domestic thieves to steal money from the programs. We have got to clean up the fraud, waste, and abuse. The changes that the House bill has, and they're very wise ones, are the ones that are going to allow us to use these programs to protect our vulnerable, because when they steal money from these programs, they're stealing from our most vulnerable. This is the most ambitious health reform bill ever in American history. It's imperative that it passes so people like me can actually keep CMS running smoothly.
When they steal money from these programs, they're stealing from our most vulnerable. But here's what he revealed next that should enrage every taxpayer. Take a look.
How can you be sure that the vulnerable enrollees who depend upon Medicaid will continue to get it? You say that you want to protect them. How can you make sure that they will be protected?
I took this job to do just that, protect our most vulnerable. And yet the plans that I've been asked to preside over, Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act exchanges in particular, are not stable programs. Medicaid spending has increased 50% in the last 5 years. And a major driver of that are the able-bodied individuals who joined the program, and half of which these individuals don't work, and many of them could work. I actually think work is a good thing in general. The economy needs more people to work. We've got twice as many jobs as our people seeking them. But in particular for Medicaid, the problem we run into is if we allow able-bodied individuals on Medicaid to get a 90% match from the federal government, states game the system. So let's go over the several accusations that I heard in those several packages. First off, we already know what happens when you take people off Medicaid. We just did it for the last 2 years. Under the Biden administration, 15 million people were disenrolled from Medicaid. 15 million. The uninsured rate went up about 10%. Went up 1.5 million people. So the vast majority of Americans, and I have confidence in the Americans' people, if you give people a chance to work or volunteer, participate in your community, go get an education, or lose your insurance, they take the job over that. And so the estimates that we're seeing are made by economists, but it's a behavioral analysis. It's a psychology analysis. Will you take the deal?
Look, this has been going on for quite a long time, so we're not going to necessarily be able to stop this on a dime. But this shows some of the ways that leftist Democrat policy has injected itself into society over many, many years. We've seen 50% increase in 5 years. Half of able-bodied recipients don't even work. This isn't healthcare. They're just trying. This is vote buying with your money. This Make America Healthy Again movement threatens the entire scheme. Work requirements restore dignity. Nutrition standards protect our children. Accountability measures expose fraud. The One Big Beautiful Bill includes all of this, and the establishment is absolutely terrified. Now, think about the psychological profile here. For decades, progressive narcissists built a system where feeling entitled to others' money became totally normalized. You can't take away our stuff. Working became optional, where poisoning yourself with junk food became a subsidized right. Classic cluster B behavior, grandiose entitlement, emotional manipulation, complete disconnect from consequences, no empathy whatsoever. They turned SNAP into a corporate welfare program for big food. They're basically subsidizing these gigantic corporations who are poisoning us. The taxpayers fund the poison, and then they fund the medical care for the poisoning. It's genius if you think about it. I mean, if you're a sociopath. It's criminal if you have a conscience. But the awakening has begun. When major food companies voluntarily remove toxins, they're basically admitting guilt. I don't think you're going to see many of them admitting guilt. They're just going to probably quietly scurry off into the night and take their poison with them. And hopefully we see a gigantic increase in just the energy of this country. Maybe kids will actually be able to go outside once and for all. When they scramble to reformulate products, they're confessing to decades of deliberate harm. And I wouldn't be surprised if some lawsuits are coming. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some accountability coming. RFK Jr. understands something fundamental. You cannot have a healthy republic with a sick population. You can't have strong families when children are basically being poisoned from birth. I'll never forget the day my son was born. Very first thing out of their mouths was, "Do you want us to stick him with these needles?" And they started trying to stab him. And I said to these nurses there, I was like, "You stabbed my son with that? I stabbed you with that. You take that poison away from my boy. He just got here. Leave him alone already. And stop stealing his money. He hasn't even stinking earned it yet." You can't have productivity when half of your workforce is disabled by preventable diseases. The MAHA revolution isn't just about removing dyes or banning corn syrup. It's about breaking through this narcissistic delusion, this psychotic delusion that corporations and governments know better than parents about what their children should eat. It's about destroying this emotional manipulation that equates food standards with cruelty. Somehow it's cruel. Insane. Somehow it's cruel to not poison people. How does that? It's not only completely lacks empathy, it lacks logic. We have to end these histrionic performances, this performative theater, where any attempt at health is fat phobia. Oh, you're just afraid of fat people. I mean, maybe if one were to sit on me, that would be scary. But nobody is afraid of fat people. And going to the gym doesn't make you afraid of fat phobia. I'm more afraid of being fat than I am of other fat people. Real food, real health, real consequences for those who poisoned us. And that is what's coming. Now, if you got any value from this report, please tap subscribe. I'm going to give you my final thought. They fed us poison. They called it progress. They created generations of sick, dependent Americans and called it compassion. Big food and big government formed this unholy alliance where they just subsidize each other. It's this weird circular kind of thing where one provided the toxins, the other subsidized the healthcare, the other subsidized the purchase of the healthcare, and it's just this big circle where we keep getting sicker, we keep needing healthcare, and guess who pays for it? The American taxpayer. And now we're supposed to give it to everybody around the world? That just doesn't make sense. Classic narcissistic abuse. Harm you, profit from your suffering, and then gaslight you about who's responsible. Now, here's your controversial question. Should food stamp recipients be banned from buying soda, candy, and junk food with taxpayer money? Yes or no? Let's hear it in the comments. I know this is going to be a little controversial. Everyone needs a little help once in a while. I don't think anybody is going to disagree with that. They used to have fellowships before this entitlement state. They used to have fellowships and organizations where citizens would get together and they would help each other out, and they would create these large communities where no one ever went hungry. Everyone always got what they needed. Now, if you are a philanthropic person, that is a good feeling. That it touches on one of the cornerstones of charity. But it's not charity when they're literally taking it from you. Now, even a charitable person, even someone who is totally charitable, let's say they have their paycheck pillaged every month. You don't know where the money's going. You don't know where your effort is going. How charitable do you think you're going to feel? It's no wonder that we don't see a lot of these around. We see a lot of them in the church. We see a lot of Christians doing it. We see a lot of philanthropy all over the country. But do we really see a lot of libs doing this? Do we really see that? I don't really think we do. Now, show them you're done being poisoned. Grab your next news gear from our shop below. Every purchase supports the health freedom movement.